Hey everyone, how's it going? TN Mortgage Podcast number 39 with your wonderful host, John Coleman of JC Mortgages. How are you, John?
How are you doing, Normie? Well,
Doing very well, thanks, mate.
I thought we were going to stop counting the numbers. By the way, I thought we'd kind of agreed that. No,
It's,
all fair. We'd
we're
agreed
aging
we
ourselves
weren't going to
by
say
numbers,
39 or
yeah.
anything. I'll come back to you on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, today we have usually we're bright and chipper and have a lot of fun on this podcast. Unfortunately, today we have a little bit of somber news around the world that we're going to do our best to dissect. And that is, of course, the most recent developments in Iran with the United States and the supreme leader Donald Trump and all his wisdom. Of course, that's sarcasm injected. But we're going to try to break down what that might mean for the economy, the global economy, and of course, locally there in Ireland.
Yeah, and thanks, Norm. You'll forgive me a bit of firstly, it's obviously a pretty sad situation, but you'll this is still in the back of my mind. You might remember me saying before the election that I really hoped that Donald Trump wouldn't win. And I think I told you, I don't know if I said it on air or not, but one of my subscribers sent me a message saying, please take me off your subscribers list. How could you possibly be voting for a liberal like her? And I kind of responded, I said, listen, I believe I'm a capitalist. I believe in making money. I believe in businesses, but I also believe in good character, right? And I kind of want to be on the right side of history on this. I don't believe he's a decent human being, and I'll happily say that out loud. When Trump won, the same guy came back to me 2 days later to gloat. But now I honored his wishes and took his name off the list, as you would. But something in the back of my head goes, I wonder because I wonder how this man feels right now. Someone who was such an advocate in the face of everything that's going on. This is a guy who promised the end of wars, right? It was going to be, and suddenly he's attacking everywhere, threatening Canada, threatening Greenland, um, as if
Spain,
these are
here
not.
where I am, even, like he'll have a huge fallout with the country and publicly and a lot
Well,
of horrible remarks, and then the next day he'll buddy up to him. I mean, it's ridiculous. He's just off the reservation. He's bonkers.
it truly is. Now, I went to a political. God, it sounds like a nerd here, by the way, but I went to an event in town there recently with Donald Trump's former press secretary for 11 days, a guy called Anthony Scaramucci, and another guy called Alistair Campbell. God, I've forgotten his name. Sorry. Alistair Campbell, who was Tony Blair's spin doctor, shall we say, for about 11 years. So two really, really interesting characters, and their take on Trump and the Trump has got no one telling him anything other than what he wants to hear. They would have said this to him. This will be done in 3 4 days. You'll be in and you'll out. Right. So he's not getting any proper advice. He is an egomaniac. I do believe he sees himself as a dictator. Like I am. I hope this doesn't sound melodramatic, but I'm convinced this guy isn't going to. Like in theory, he will become a lame duck president, and that's what they're actually saying. But I'm not sure. I would. The guy is so power hungry that I don't know what circumstances he will invent to basically sort of stay in power. I
Right.
hope I'm wrong, and I hope I'm not being a sort of a fear monger here in any shape or form. But those noises are being made. Like he has even a third term from Trump hat that he wears or
Yeah, John,
something.
and I'll interject there because I
Yeah,
don't think it'll go that far, and not because he doesn't want it to, a third term. I think number one, the American people, that's even for most people, that's way out of bounds, and he's so old that I think he'll break down and whatever will happen. But here's the alternative: you get a Donald Trump Jr. as the running for president,
yeah.
who's pulling the strings of the puppet, so that's just as scary, right?
Yeah, well, and yeah, I do think he is a cult figure though. So, and
Oh yeah.
when cult figures kind of exit stage left, the movement sort of will
Yeah.
factor will split. Well, and that's what I would hope will happen. And
Yeah.
there are signs of that. In the guy Anthony Scaramucci, he is convinced that he is come November when the midterms are, he is going to become less and less relevant. I just have my fear as to when he becomes less relevant
More desperate.
are desperate. What happens then? Like he's already defied the Supreme Court, called them jackasses, basically, right? When they didn't agree with him. So anyone that steps out of line, you can back him 99 times. And then the one time you say you disagree, you're like the greatest traitor going. Um, so what's happening, I suppose, I have this, I suppose, anti-Trump feeling about me, and I suppose maybe it's clouding my judgment on
I
it.
think you
But
have a pro-human being, common sense bit about you, and that's what, it's not anti-Trump, it's pro-human
yeah,
being.
I find narcissism as a character in people very appalling. I just don't. I just think it's so self. You gotta see outside yourself, you know. So um, anyway, I get passionate and depressed when I start talking about him.
Well,
Um, but apparently, it's kind of ironic given that we're talking about it. He's been great for the podcast business. Donald
mhm.
Trump in his own right, because the amount of shows that are being created just to talk about him and what he does and the madness that comes out of his mouth every single day, you know. So, but I suppose the purpose of this really is to sort of give you our thoughts in relation to, or share our thoughts in relation to how it might impact um, the mortgage and the property market here in Ireland. Again, full disclaimer on this. I'm not an economist, nor do I want to pretend to be, but obviously I am pretty close to the Irish market, and the Irish property market, and what's going on. Um, Here's my kind of very gut reaction 6 days or 7 days after the first attack, basically, right? Um, there were similar noises or fears from people um, when Russia invaded Ukraine, right? As in, it was going to have an incredibly destabilizing impact on the world economies, right? Now, sadly, that is still ongoing, and it doesn't seem like it's
4 years,
um,
right? It's four
yeah,
years.
it's just over 4 years, and it's shocking. And I don't the level of public awareness. I remember when it first happened, like all the countries were there in support and were trying to help all the people from Ukraine as best they possibly could. That that kind of life just noise takes over, other noise takes over. So it's not as much in people's consciousness as it probably as it should be, right? Now, I don't want to belittle it, but just in relation to the sort of comparison between that situation and where we are right now and the impact that may or may not have on the property market here and the mortgage. I feel a little bit when there's a sort of a war going on, I do feel a little kind of conscious about not, and I'm trying to find the right way to describe this. I don't want to belittle what's happening because
Yeah,
it's shocking across the board. It really is shocking.
yeah,
Now, obviously, the Iranian regime is a shocking regime, right? I wouldn't want to try to defend them in any shape or form, but I would probably be of the view that the war, in effect, via international laws, is illegal, right? I don't think there was any imminent threat to the US or anything on that. So, it does appear that Israel are pulling the coats of the US on this. But again, I don't want to get in. I don't want to pretend I'm a political junkie either or have great inside knowledge. But that's just from an outsider looking on. But I suppose to bring it back to what I can talk about and what I do know with a certain level of authority is the mortgage market and the property market here in Ireland. You're looking at Here's what was expected to happen when Russia invaded the Ukraine. Again, it all boils down to, I think you said it to me previously, oil, right? Oil is a sort of um, who controls the oil, who controls the oil prices. So there's going to be, oil is going to, the price of oil currently will go up. Okay, so there's
yeah.
no two ways about that. So here's my very layman's economic interpretation of how that might play out, right? If the price of oil goes up, okay, what it can do, it can lead to inflation, okay? And in Ireland, you've already seen the price of petrol going up, whether that's petrol companies kind of taking advantage of the situation or it is a natural result of what's happened, who's to know? But that's where the price will go. Now, if inflation is to go up, what could happen? There's two ways of looking at this. The European Central Bank's fundamental kind of economic remit is to keep inflation low.
Yeah.
The only tool that ECB have to do that is interest rates.
Yeah.
Okay. So when after COVID, interest rates went through because inflation went through the roof after COVID, because there was all this money had been thrown into the system, they basically had to put the rates up by 4% in a very short period of time. That did its job, okay? And they got inflation back under control, and then the rates came down, and they kind of bottomed out at the back of in the kind of toward the back end of last year. The expectation for this year was that the rates would remain stable, okay? At the same time, basically, if they thought they might go anyway, it would be down, not up, okay? So if there's an inflation basically impact because of the price of oil, because of the uncertainty in the world. Like I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and this is very simple. She works in a retail company, and they're buying in a lot of stock from Bangladesh. Well, the seaway is being blocked, and they
Mhm.
can't travel by air. So suddenly you might see supplies in stock in shops falling because of this if it continues for any length of time. But going back to the sort of inflation piece, right? Interest rates would go up if the inflation went out. Now, if the world economy, so that's one economic argument, okay? The other economic argument would be if suddenly this created a world recession, right? What do the central banks do in recessionary times? They reduce interest rates. So you could put 10 economists in a room and you'll get 10 different
Yeah.
opinions as to what might happen. The inflation didn't really go up after the war, the sort of when Russia invaded the Ukraine. So I don't know if this is different or in terms of the impact. It's hard to say for sure. And again, I don't have the necessary knowledge to give a definitive opinion on it. But again, my instinct would be that it's of a similar nature. And I'd see slight rises in inflation. So let's bring that forward then to the sort of mortgage market, right? And it probably ties in line with what I was saying when we did our predictions at the start of the year. I don't see house prices going up as much as they did last year, right? And but if interest rates were to go up, I still don't see the prices falling. I
Yeah.
would basically go back to the gap between supply and demand is still too big in Ireland for it to have that impact. What it would do, in effect, is reduce the massive kind of bidding wars that are still going on. Okay, so suddenly you've got a supply there, you've got demand up here. So suddenly, maybe with the interest rates, if they were to go up, you might have that, but it doesn't lead to a fall in price. If you look at just the equilibrium of supply and demand, it would just mean less frenetic bidding, I suppose, would be one way to look at it. Um, the other impact on this is okay, that's just in the sort of a if you're looking to buy a house, what happens if you currently own a home, okay? Or you're about to take a choice on your interest rates, okay? Well, again, there is a lot of crystal ball stuff here, right? Um, if you're coming off an interest rate now, with all this uncertainty, do you think rates are going to come down? Do you lock into a longer term rate whereby you take all the geopolitical risk out of your mortgage? That's not that's like there is one bank out there currently that will offer you a fixed rate for the life of the mortgage.
Yeah.
Some people don't like doing that, but there's a value in security, right?
Ability. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
inconsistency and predictability. There's, yeah, value in that. Yeah.
there's an absolute value in that. And it's funny, I like that concept, even though I'm more of, because I view myself more of a risk taker. But I think the concept of being able to take all risk out of one of the biggest products you'll ever take, one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make in your life, a mortgage, is it's not to be dismissed lightly, you know. And given what's going on in the world, that sort of that option to fix your mortgage for the long term is really, really worth worth considering. Now, that's not a blanket recommendation because each person has different set of circumstances and have different plans. But
Mhm.
it's certainly worthy of consideration when if you're coming to the end of your interest rate, what would you do now? Would you basically now? I always and I'd still maintain this point. If your rates are coming to an end, you need to be looking at reducing the term. That's the first thing I always try to advise people. Like you might have 25 years left in your mortgage. Well, see, can you reduce it to 20? Can you? Because obviously, in the say 3 or 5 years, if you took a 3 or 5 year fixed rate, your incomes might have gone up. So suddenly you can afford to pay more. That ultimately will be a really smart move in relation to cutting the total cost of buying a home for yourself, you know? So that would be so, and again, I'm not really giving any definitive answers because would be reluctant to do that. Um, but I don't see if you were to ask me to put my sort of my color to the mast, I would say the following. I don't see house prices falling. That I say with a lot of certainty. A little bit of the madness might come out of or a little bit of the heat might come out of the sort of the process, which for people trying to buy a home is going to make them is a good thing. But I don't know if I've ever described this in conversation with you. I view the world or sort of people in terms of three categories. You're going to have your risk takers, your risk neutral, and your risk adverse. Okay. The risk adverse people are always going to be reluctant to make a decision, no matter what's going on in the world. They'll find, and this is not right or wrong in this. They'll find a reason as to not do something. Like I go
Confirmation
back,
bias. If they're looking for a reason not to act, they'll find it
yeah,
100%.
like I'll go back as far as 10 years ago when the Brexit was the big topic, and people were using that as a reason not to buy a home, right? Then obviously COVID came. That was a reason, not an excuse, a very valid reason. Then there was the interest rates. So then there was the Ukraine war. So there's always going to be a reason to it's a huge decision. Buying a house is a massive decision. Like I think I've said this to you on this call. I got sick when I was buying my first house. I'm going, oh my God, what am I doing? All this, like it was crazy. So there's no judgment here, by the way. So the next type of people are kind of more risk neutral. They will go with the what I would consider to be the prevailing mood of society in general. So if everyone's saying house prices are going to continue to go up, I want to buy a home. If the sort of prevailing mood is one of, oh my God, what's happening in the world, they might take a step back and wait. And then you're going to have the risk takers, the ones that will, I don't care what's happening in the world. I want my home, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be there for the next 20 years of my life, whether the house
Basically,
prices,
based on life circumstances
yeah,
and
life circumstances. So, and I don't, if the house goes down by 50 grand or up by 50 grand, it doesn't make any difference because I'm not going anywhere. I want my home. So I argue that, okay, if the prevailing mood was to change, if the prevailing mood was to sort of move from one of we need to get a house to one of what's going to happen in the world, I still think there's enough of the risk who are going to buy a house regardless to keep versus the supply that's out there. That's what's not going to have the impact. Because if you go back to the COVID at the time, all the so-called experts saying, "Oh, house price." Even before COVID, they were saying house prices were overvalued. Right? COVID came along, and it was really this. They were saying, "Oh, house price is going to fall 10 to 15%." They were so wrong. Now, you might remember, I've said this a few times, I said they wouldn't fall. Joe, you might remember me saying that. Okay. Didn't say they'd go up though. I
you have the
just said they
receipts. You have the receipts. Yeah.
I didn't say they'd go up. I just said this the gap is too big, right?
Yeah.
And that's like I go back, as I said, I did study economics to a point, and fundamentally supply and
They
demand is
were
what
printing so much money as well, and interest rates were so low, and it was so,
yeah,
that yeah,
it was
one
so
interesting thing, I think most countries will be affected by this. war in Iran because it's or the Middle East or because it is a war of attrition. I don't think US is going to be able to invade and the whole thing is over in 4 days, like that ridiculous notion that is probably in Donald Trump's ear or his head.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to take a long
But
time.
remember, go back 6 months now. I'm sorry for going across you. He said he had obliterated their nuclear facilities. It was the greatest triumph ever. So how he's justifying this, and
I know.
again, I don't know.
Israel, I think, ready to dive in, and they said you're either, we're either doing this alone or you're with us, or some version of that. I think it was like you said before, Israel is pulling the strings a lot more. But I think most countries or economies will be affected just because of oil and prices go up. Oil and the shipping, the strategic shipping location of Iran and the strait there there's not much that they don't control in that region of the world going all the way to China and anywhere in Africa, Middle East, Europe. And so I think a lot of economies are going to be affected, but Ireland I think is pretty well insulated. And yeah, we'll
Well, it's
see.
funny. We are a very open country, and we've a very like our obviously Patrick's Day is coming up, and we've a very like our prime minister, Taoiseach is the word we use, but the prime minister is has a trip over to the US every year, is invited over for Patrick's Day, and um, it's an exercise for the poor. Like I don't know what like do you go there and kiss the ring, shall we say, or do you go there and stand up to him? Because um, like it's a lose-lose from a political point of view. It's absolutely lose. He got there last year. He 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 basically did what I thought was a decent enough job, but again, he didn't. I suppose he was flattering Trump to a point, right? And that as much as that galls me, right, and it truly galls me to do it. I think for a little small country like Ireland, um, we we want his anger elsewhere, shall we say, right? And
Yeah,
that's
it's not worth being on his radar. It's almost like
yeah.
you know
Now he has a few golf courses here in Ireland that he proudly claims to be the best golf courses in the world. But so our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, is going over there in a couple of weeks' time, and I think his job is get in, get out, and get back
get
home.
strategic St.
Look,
Patrick's Day and not
yeah,
political. Yeah.
yeah, local politics will always dictate. Like if he does one thing, he'll be told he's selling out all the people in the world. If he does another thing, he's selling out his Irish. So it's a lose lose for me.
Lose. Yeah.
He has to go. He has to kind of I wouldn't say kiss the ring, but he kind of needs to like he's going
Play
there
the,
out of respect for
play
the
the game.
American people and the connection between Ireland and America.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's acknowledging or endorsing anything Donald Trump does or says, but he does need to make sure that we respect the relationship because it's a very important relationship for Ireland's economy, right? There's a lot of multinationals here that provide a lot of jobs, and it's so you don't want to. It's a situation I wouldn't want to be in, or wouldn't even want to be advising. If I was putting my sort of a political advisor's hat on, and you're kind of going, well, buddy, this is a tough one. Just get in, get out, and hopefully it'll be forgotten about. But because he'll attack, like he's attacking Spain at the moment because they wouldn't
They wouldn't
let
let
his planes land or something
airplanes
like that.
fly through
Well,
here like that. Yeah, exactly.
so but it's funny. The guy at this presentation I was at was kind of the people he has kind of like the Canadian Prime Minister. What's his name again? I'm having do you can you think of his name?
Uh, Not Trudeau. Wasn't that the
No, no, no.
previous one, right?
He stood up to him anyway, and in truth, he stood up to him in a really, really powerful way. And Trump has almost been kind of respectful of the fact that this guy had the guts to, rather than as much as he'll slag him off publicly, will kind of almost acknowledge the fact that this guy is standing up to him. So and there's a guy in there's an American Democrat who's basically attacking Trump the whole time in a very kind of come get me. He's the governor of California, gray-haired
Gavin
guy.
Newsom. Gavin Newsom.
Yes, I'm impressed by him. I have to say, I think he's very I like him.
California is a hot mess. I mean, and I'm, people call me pretty liberal. I would describe myself on that side of the philosophy or governance, but there's no denying there's a hot mess in California. But I actually really like Gavin and what he's saying as well. But I don't think he could run for president and win. But I love how he stands up to Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and but apparently your man Scaramucci was saying behind the scenes, Trump is ringing your man, right? Because he's attacking him, right? Oh, are we okay, Gab? And
Yeah.
even with the prime minister normally of Canada when he was elected, this was an interesting story. When the prime minister of Canada was elected, normally the first person they call is the president of the US, right? Your man didn't call Trump, right? 2 or 3 days later, Trump's turning to his political advisor and saying, "Why hasn't he called?" Right? And basically, she then, through some back channeling, rang them. He said, "Well, how can I ring a guy who's saying we're the 53rd state and all this sort of stuff?" So he'd only have a conversation with him on agreed terms. That he was basically addressing him as not the go. I think he was addressing them as the governor of Canada or some demeaning thing like that. So, but he stood up to him. So
Yeah.
if you were to take that argument with the Irish Prime Minister going there, I say Prime Minister because anyone, in case people don't understand the word T, say the word Taoiseach, Norm.
Say that again.
Say the word Taoiseach.
Taoiseach.
Oh, well done. That's
That okay?
impressive. Yeah, no, I'm really impressed. I know you have a way with languages now, in fairness. So, wow, well done. Our Taoiseach slash Prime Minister, maybe, I don't know, part of me would love him to stand up to Trump, but I just fear the consequences, you know?
Yeah, and with your Taoiseach has important decisions because you're absolutely right. Do you want to be, the object of Trump's scalding wrath that day
Yeah.
and do a disservice to your people and all the consequences that come with it, or sort of back away slowly and be on the right side of history at the same time? So it's a tough
It
balance
is,
of
and but fundamentally he's a bully, right? And he's picking
yeah.
on people that are smaller than him. So I do think it's the power of the group is the only way of working him. So he isolates individuals on their own, right? Rather than so an individual on their own is going to maybe cower. But these people and countries alike, they need to be working together. They need to be able to stand up as a group and
Which is scary because that starts bringing allies to Iran, China, Russia,
yeah,
we've already seen it with Palestine and stuff, how many people are, of course, very concerned with the humanitarian crisis and genocide there as they should be. But Donald Trump is losing moderate allies left and right by his antics. But
yeah, he's certainly
it's
changing
interesting.
the world order.
We had our predictions and previews for 2026 only a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
And you very eloquently laid out, okay, mortgage interest rates, supply and demand, the economy, this, that, and then the big caveat, the big asterisk was, of course, if everything goes bonkers and there's World War III, then this all goes out the window. And we're only in March and already everything is out the window, you know?
Yeah, well, I did use the word no one knows what Trump can do next. So it wasn't outrageously difficult to predict that he was going to do. And I just fear that after November, in theory, if he becomes a lame duck, what's he going to do? But listen, that's a conversation for another day. I hope. So I know we've talked about that one individual, but that's what the message we're trying to get across to people here. That I'm trying to get across in relation to house prices is, well, it might bring some level of calming of the market,
Yeah.
but don't. This would be my opinion now. Don't sit back and go, okay, well, I'm going to. Well, you could be right. This is just if it was me, I wouldn't be going, okay, I'm going to wait for a year to see what happens. And then suddenly, if I'm buying a home and if it's an investment, absolutely wait till you feel it's the right time. But a home is a lifestyle choice. So if you see yourself happy there, if there's schools there, or whatever for a family or near your job, near your hobbies, near your friends, whatever makes your life better, don't be worrying about what may or happen in the next 6 months or the next year. You're buying something for 10, 15 years. So, as you know, and I've said this, I bought two properties in Ireland at the worst possible time. Within 6 months of buying, the second one, the market crash. Now I got lucky. That's all it was. I didn't have to sell, but it was pure luck.
Yeah.
There were moments where it could have gone the other way. So, but because I was able to take a long-term view, I was able to ride out
Yeah.
the negative
Exactly.
equity, shall we say.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's very good advice and good analysis. I'm sure we'll touch on this subject, in upcoming podcasts as well, because this problem isn't going away quickly. But turning to a little bit better news, you actually were telling me about a book that you picked up lately and you
I
wanted to share.
did, yeah. I don't know if you know this feeling. I had an appointment with my accountant, right? Who where you're always terrified of how much he's going to tell you how much tax that you're going to owe. So I was sitting waiting. He was in with a different client, and I just came across this book that was sitting on the counter, and it started starting. You kind of pick up a book, and it was my as you know, I fundamentally my life has changed on the back of books that I have read in the past. So I'm a big believer in little fonts of knowledge that you can glean from reading books, right? Um, but so this one I picked up. I'm going to show it to you because it's called "Take Control of Your Business."
You control
So
your
I
business.
start. Yeah, I started reading. The guy who wrote it is a guy called Eamon O'Sullivan. He's the business partner of my accountant, right?
Okay.
And I'd only ever met him once before, and I was impressed with him. And my own personal accountant would have been talking about this man for many years and saying how great he was, how he was in effect the reason he had succeeded. Okay, so he spoke really, really high of him. So I'm kind of reading through this as you do, and I kind of going, yeah, oh my God, there's a few points in here. Oh, yeah, I can do that. I can use that. So I've read it since, and it's really really excellent. So I don't think I've ever actually recommended anything on our podcast. Perhaps maybe might have said the Elephant and Castle chicken wings might have been the only time
Ah,
I ever been.
old school. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
very early on. That
I
was, I
stand by
think,
those chicken wings, but from an
yeah, yeah, yeah.
intellectual point of view, and would probably be, well, certainly for small businesses, this book I found really, really a great read. I know I'm going to be bringing in some of the little things that I've learned and just adapting. And I think anyone that has their own business, it's all about just picking up little pieces, looking to adapt. Okay, we're in a world of where AI is kind of the buzzword and everyone's kind of talking about that. But there's still great knowledge to be got from
Yeah.
just someone who has basically been dealing with businesses all his life, right? And has put what I liked most about it was it wasn't delivered in a lecturing way. It was delivered in a very much a conversation, right? If you're just having a conversation with someone, and I really liked it. So there you go. Eamon O'Sullivan, take control of your business. There you go.
Awesome.
We'll
Well, I
probably
want to read.
include in the email you would send out. We'll include a link to that for anyone that
Yeah,
might be
we'll throw a
interested.
link in the
Yeah,
video notes and show notes and stuff. But yeah,
yeah,
I want to read it as well. So,
yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing that, John.
No, no problem at all. It was really as I said, I find books very inspirational, and I feel you can get great energy, great motivation just from when you just when a light bulb goes off. You know, when you get a light bulb moment, you kind of go, yes,
Yeah.
right? And there's no better feeling than that. You kind of go, why didn't I think of that sooner? But that's you kind of have to live with that, you know.
Oh, that's great. And yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. Books and all sorts of things like that. You're learning from other people's lives and mistakes and
yeah.
experience. And even if you read something and
No, maybe someday you and I'll write a book together on all our mistakes in life.
there you go. Oh, it's going to be a long book. That might be an encyclopedia length series.
Right back at you. But anyways, as long as we're making progress every day, which I think we are, we'll
Stumble
stand by that.
forward and
Yeah.
you are genuinely helping a lot of people. So that's great.
Well,
But yeah,
we
well,
hope.
wonderful. We Tea and Mortgage number 39. We covered a lot of topics here, and I'm sure people are going to ask your opinion on certain things with Iran and the war and the economy and what might happen. So everyone is open to contacting you, any of your contact info or social media for more personalized advice.
Absolutely. And listen, as always, Norm, that was a great chat. Hopefully, anyone listening got some good information from it. Again, it's always a case of take that and add other information to form your own opinion because we're only one people looking at this, and there's a world that's going on around us, and it's not the greatest place at the moment. but it is changing on a daily basis. So just keep yourself informed and educated is kind of the advice we give, you know.
Absolutely. And as we close, if it's okay with you, I just wanted to give a special happy birthday to my son Anthony, who on Tuesday is turning in one day, basically turning 4 years old, the big four. So, Anthony,
Ah,
love you, buddy.
Anthony, happy birthday from John from Dublin, from JC. Okay, well, can I promote JC Mortgages? No, no, sorry.
Sure, no problem.
Anthony, have a great day. And someday we might get you over to Ireland.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for watching T and Mortgage 39 and take care, John.
Cheers.